Hello and welcome back to Toto's Tales, and in this video we're continuing our trend of starting the year off with some care guides, and this video is all going to be around your basic care and setup for a leopard gecko. Here is Ahsoka. If you couldn't tell already from this channel, all my reptiles are named after Star Wars characters. Yeah, so this video will teach you everything you need to have your own leopard gecko. So Ahsoka's just going to be in my hand the whole time here. She likes to hang her tail off my hand often because she's very strange. So if you just see a tail floating around the place, that's why. I don't know if you'll be able to see her as much as you saw Rex, because Rex is moving about a lot and is a lot bigger, whereas Ahsoka just fits in my hand. But she's here the whole time, don't you worry. And you can see just here, down here, underneath Rex's Vivarium is Ahsoka's Vivarium. Now, actually, one of the videos in the new year that's going to be on this channel is a brand new bioactive setup for Ahsoka. She's getting a new vivarium because she's been here a while now. She's actually my oldest reptile at 2.5 years old. I've had her for about 2 years and she's kind of getting bored of her current vivarium, and I'm someone who doesn't want to get loads of animals. I just want to make sure that the animals that I have are in the best care. So she's going to be getting a massive upgrade, but that perfectly segues us into vivariums. Now, with leopard geckos, they're obviously not as big as ball pythons. However, they still do need a decent amount of space. The minimum requirements for an adult leopard gecko is a 40-gallon minimum, which is roughly 36 by 18 in terms of floor space. Now, you will get lots of pet shops especially who tell you just don't need anything that big at all. 20 gallons fine. It absolutely is not. For babies, yes, it can be, but generally for adults, the minimum you need is 40 gallons. Currently, Ahsoka is in an 80-gallon vivarium. It's in weird dimensions. It's like 3 foot long by 1.5 by 1.5. She doesn't really utilize as much of the length, so I'm actually getting her a 90-gallon, and it's going to be 3 2 by 2. So same length, but she's getting more floor space and more height. Now, in terms of substrate, there is some slight misinformation where you will see some people say that any form of loose substrate is bad, it won't work, it will cause impaction. That is true if you use the wrong kind of loose substrate, such as just basic sands and stuff like that. However, you are more than welcome to use actual leopard gecko safe substrate mixes that are loose. The most common is a mix of topsoil and sand, which a lot of people go with, especially if you're going bioactive. I currently have Ahsoka, as you can see by the kind of stock footage over the top, in a Arcadia arid earth mix soil. So it's completely loose substrate, but it's designed for her, so there's no chance of impaction. You can, however, have them on paper towels. You can have them on other forms of substrate such as that. However, the important thing to remember is to not have them on anything like reptile carpet, because that can cause their nails to go. They have I know you can't really see her, but she has little nails and they can get caught and snag and rip off in the reptile carpet. So if you just want to be as kind of sanitary as possible, then have them on paper towel. That's absolutely fine. However, you can then have them on loose substrate as long as it is accurate for their needs. Now, in terms of heating, these are a species that require a bit hotter temperatures than the ball python that we discussed, but not dramatically different. So on the hot side, they will require anything between 32 and 34 degrees Celsius, which is roughly, as I can see below me, 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the side with the actual heat source over it, as Ahsoka now starts to climb up my arm. What are you doing, miss? She often likes to be held like a nunchuck because she's very strange. In terms of the cool side, they prefer anything between 21 and 24. So actually cooler than the ball python typically. So that is also roughly between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And these guys require a basking temperature of anywhere between 35 and 38 degrees Celsius, which is roughly anywhere between 90 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. She's clawing down my legs. The best way to do this is, much like with a ball python, you can use a deep heat projector, and actually Ahsoka is an albino leopard gecko, so actually that really does help her because it doesn't give off a light. However, a halogen bulb can also work exactly the same. As ever, this is all to be monitored on a thermostat and with thermometers, again digital, or if you need, a heat gun, which is, I think, something that every single reptile keeper should have. It gives you exact readings on whatever spot you aim it at. Now, there's something else we need to speak about that we didn't actually have to speak about with ball pythons because it's not necessary, but I would argue that it is necessary to provide UVB for your leopard gecko because it emulates the sun, it prevents them having metabolic bone disease. We've went over the last few years to thinking it's recommended to have UVB to it's quite necessary to have UVB. I will say, out of everything, this isn't the main priority. If you can get everything else, then that's fine, but I would heavily recommend then pretty soon after you get your leopard gecko, install some UVB. I use Arcadia, again 2.5% UVB because, as I say, Ahsoka is an albino, so as a result requires a little bit less wattage and percentage because it would damage her eyes. However, there's 5%, 7%, 10%, 15%, whatever you want to use. Just do your research in that regard for your own specific leopard gecko. Now, in regards to humidity, this is where the biggest difference between this care guide and the last care guide I did with Rex and the ball python is that Rex's humidity needs to be far higher than Ahsoka's humidity because leopard geckos stay in way more arid settings. They are not a tropical species, they are an arid species. That does not mean it needs to be 10%. However, it doesn't mean to be anywhere near 60%. I currently have on Ahsoka's hot side 30% humidity, and then that stretches up to 45. 45 I actually boosted because Ahsoka seemed to be a wee bit dehydrated, so therefore prefers a slightly bit of higher humidity on her cool side, but generally there is that lack of humidity on the other side. You're aiming for anywhere between 30 and 50%, but more towards 40%. However, you can include something called a humid hide, which you can see here on the screen, which Ahsoka has, and that's always at a higher level of humidity. So, especially when she's in shed, she can specifically go in there. I've just got wet paper towel in it, however you can use sphagnum moss, and it will boost the humidity, so when she's in shed, she can go into a specific area of her vivarium to get a bit more moisture. Now, that will always need to be in the middle of the vivarium, because if it's in the hot side, it'll dry out way too much. If it's in the cool side, it probably will be too humid for them and they could get respiratory infections, so stick it in the middle. That then perfectly lets us move on to hides. So you will need a hot hide. As I say, that is roughly in the area of the basking spot between 33 and 35 degrees. However, just generally on the hot side of the vivarium, they need a hot hide, they need a cool hide on the other end, and as I say, preferably a humid hide, as Ahsoka now starts to get very energetic and what are you doing? She's a bit of a maniac. Rex is a lot more chill than her, whereas she's very much like, I'm off, I'm doing what I want to do. And yes, then finally a humid hide in the middle of the vivarium. You can then include as many hides as you want, but you need a minimum of those 3 to provide a gradient once again. Continuing on that thread, again, much like with ball pythons, leopard geckos love clutter. They need to feel safe, they need to feel secure. So especially if you're putting them in a bigger vivarium, please ensure that you always have enough clutter for them to feel safe. Again, the general rule is they should be able to get from one end of the tank to the other without being seen. Again, that's not a hard and fast rule. I'm not saying you can't have empty open spaces, but try and keep them minimal and try and always allow them spaces to be hidden. And finally, in terms of the key things you need is feeding. So leopard geckos are insectivores, which means they can only eat insects. Please try and vary those diets. That's the most important thing. Currently, I have Ahsoka on mealworms, I have her on dubia roaches, occasionally with hornworms and crickets. The best way to stop them going on eating strikes, any form of hunger strikes generally, is to keep a varied diet. Also, it just means that they actually get more, it's more enjoyable for them. Imagine you just sat eating toast for the rest of your life. It would not be good. The 2 key things that you need to do with those insects are first, gut load them, which means feed the insects. So put any spare vegetables you have in from your own cooking, such as I use carrots and potatoes a lot, because it gut loads the insects, because whatever they eat is going to go inside your leopard gecko. And additionally, you need to dust them with dietary supplements because they won't get all the required vitamins that they would need just by eating house-fed insects. So this is Earth Pro A. This one is specifically designed for use with UVB. So if you're using UVB, please know there is a difference and you will need to get different supplementary powders. And additionally, I have Calcium Pro with magnesium as well. All of this is from Arcadia, and that is kept in a small little dish in Ahsoka's vivarium at all times. So if she herself feels like her calcium levels aren't up to it, she can just go and eat that at any time she wants. So yeah, that is the end of the basic care guide. I will go more in depth as the year goes on with more advanced stuff. All this information came from Leopard Gecko subreddits, creators I've enjoyed over the last few years, and just my own experience in the last 18 months owning Ahsoka. They're amazing pets. Absolutely wonderful. Very beginner friendly. I would highly recommend them. But again, much like I said in the last video, please do your research. Don't just listen to me. Listen to as many outlets as you possibly can and be prepared before you bring an animal home. Massive thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know any other videos you'd like to see. And from me and Ahsoka, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.